Let me finish my answer. The problem is, Avery, and this is something you know that I know you know, but you don't care. Historians don't consider the New Testament to be a reliable source of information. They quote it, and they quote various Christian beliefs that were prevalent in the first century as continuities, as a part of the historical method, but they don't take the New Testament itself as a reliable source of information. Historians don't consider the resurrection or miracles, or they don't consider the New Testament to be a reliable source of information. So appealing to the New Testament as the quote-unquote primary source of information, just because the Old Testament mentions a crucified person, doesn't then verify everything in the New Testament. You have to verify the authenticity and reliability of the New Testament, which I know you can't, Avery, which you're embarrassed
Today,
by. And yes,
GodLogic is back at it again,
openly admits
going
that the
head
New
to head
is not
with
a perfect source of
Dawa over
information.
Dunya
It
in one of the most heated
they are
debates
four
you'll
anonymous
see
documents.
this
you
year.
know that, Avery. Stop
Watch
hiding. You
as
know
GodLogic presses him hard on the historical facts. Did Jesus really get crucified under Pontius Pilate? Is the New Testament actually reliable according to scholars like Bart Ehrman? And why does the other side keep interrupting every time the heat turns up? You're about to see Contradictions exposed, Isaiah 53 broken down, and one of the biggest gotcha moments in recent Christian-Muslim debates. If you love raw, no-holds-barred apologetics where nobody's safe, this one's for you. Make sure you're locked in, because things are about to get spicy. Stay tuned till the end. You do not want to miss how this one finishes.
The majority of historians who base their conclusions off continuities and base their conclusions based upon the only sources we have available, which are Christian sources, right? They quote the New Testament. However, here's a couple points. One, majority of historians who are secular base their conclusions based upon a couple things. First of all, continuities, based upon the continuity that Romans crucified lots of people, and that we have sources that tell us a man named Jesus was crucified. Sure, yes, majority of secular historians believe that a man was crucified. The problem is, Avery, that's not what the book of Isaiah is prophesizing, supposedly. Not just some Tom, Dick, and Harry named Jesus was crucified. It's that supposedly the Lamb of God was crucified for the sins of the world. Yeah? Atheists believe Christ was crucified. Jews believe Christ was crucified. That's fine. The question of whether a guy was crucified is not what you're proving here. The prophecy is not just that some guy was crucified. It was that the Lamb of God, right? He was cut off supposedly. What does the prophecy supposedly say? It was what do you call it? He was killed for the sins of many. I forget the exact words of the prophecy, but nonetheless, basically, according to you, it teaches that he died for the sins of the world. He was cut off from the land of the living for the sins of the world. Yeah, that's the prophecy. It's not that just some guy in the future is going to die. Otherwise, we can claim anyone crucified fulfills that prophecy. So, Avery, let me ask that question. Let me ask that question to you. Does anyone being crucified fulfill that prophecy?
So you don't even realize how you just helped me. You just admitted that according to historians, Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate. And according to Isaiah, it talks about the crucifixion of Jesus. It isn't just that the New Testament authors are matching a story that they find in the Old Testament. They're recording history. Now, let me ask, let's put it into this perspective, So one, you admitted that historians agree that Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate. Now, here's my question to you. What is the primary source? What is the primary source that they use to come to the conclusion that Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate? What's the primary source, Rumzi?
Let me finish my answer. The problem is, Avery, and this is something you know that I know you know, but you don't care. Historians don't consider the New Testament to be a reliable source of information. They quote it, and they quote various Christian beliefs that were prevalent in the first century as continuities, as a part of the historical method, but they don't take the New Testament itself as a reliable source of information. Historians don't consider the resurrection or miracles, or they don't consider the New Testament to be a reliable source of information. So appealing to the New Testament as the quote unquote primary source of information, just because the Old Testament mentions a crucified person, doesn't then verify everything in the New Testament. You have to verify the authenticity and reliability of the New Testament, which I know you can't, Avery, which you're embarrassed by. And yes, Christian scholarship openly admits that the New Testament is not a perfect source of information. It is an anonymous, they are 4 anonymous documents. You know that, Avery. Stop hiding. You know that.
Rumzi, you literally just gave me the discussion. First, you admitted that according to historians, they agree that Jesus was crucified. Then you just admitted out of your own mouth, out of your fast-speaking mouth, that the primary source that they use to come to this conclusion is the New Testament. So these are 2 things, guys. He admitted that Jesus was crucified according to historians, and he also agreed that the primary source that they use to conclude that Jesus was crucified is the New Testament. While in the same breath, he then said that they don't take the New Testament as a reliable source of information. Are you dense? How do you contradict yourself in the same breath like that? Dude, thank you for this discussion. I appreciate you giving me this every single time we talk. So which is it? Do the historians use the New Testament as the primary source, or do they not? But you said that they do. So is it reliable for them, or is it not? How are they using a source that they say is unreliable to conclude that it as their primary source, the fact that Jesus was crucified by Pontius Pilate in the 1st century? You're contradicting yourself all over the place, man. You're a rookie at this. Here's another thing, too. Hold on, this is getting gifts, so it's a little loud. Here's another thing, too, Rumzi, that you're failing to deal with and you're failing to acknowledge. So now that we've concluded, your mods muted me. It's crazy, isn't it, how they do? You're probably gonna have to unmute or unmod the ones who keep muting me, host. Honestly, it's probably gonna keep going like this. But this is how it is. So Rumzi, not only that do you have to deal with it. So with your admissions, you just admitted that the crucifixion of Jesus is a historical fact, and it is historically reliable by virtue of the New Testament, according to scholars. Now, again, if you're trying to go into the problem of the resurrection, that is that's a miraculous event. Now, they don't have an explanation. We can argue for the resurrection all day long, but that's not the subject here. We can do that next. But the subject here is the historicity of the New Testament and the events of Jesus that the historians, as you admitted, uses the primary source to say that Jesus was crucified, which then supplements the point that Isaiah 53 is a true prophecy of a historical event that even you admitted is historical by the scholars' admission.
Do you want to answer that?
I'm gonna address what I remember. So you mentioned the historical method. You said you mentioned the historical method, and you said that historians judge things by continuity. That's not all that entails the historical method, Rumzi. So I'm gonna read some of the stuff of what the historical method entails. So it entails independent and multiple attestation, which is similar with what you said. You're talking about continuity, right? So multiple attestation and independent sources. It includes, which are the New Testament sources. Criterion of embarrassment, which is what you have in the New Testament, with the New Testament authors claiming that they ran and were cowards, and even went against Jesus sometimes and rejected him, dismissing him. You have.
Can you drop these? Wait, can you drop these guys? Can you wait 1 second, Rumzi? I'm trying to
there's no need. If you're gonna drop anybody, we're good. Goodness.
Okay, Abram, so what point are you trying to prove right now? Just so I know, what point are you proving?
The historical method that you mentioned. You mentioned how the historians take things by continuity. You said, I don't understand what the historical method is, so I'm giving you the historical method. Okay, so we have early attestation, independent sources, and multiple attestation. You have the criterion of embarrassment, which I already mentioned, how the disciples, rejected Jesus, ran from Jesus, were cowards, right? You have, so it's mentioning their embarrassment there. You also have the criterion of coherence. Now, this one says this. It says the criterion of coherence looks at the larger pattern of Christ's historical circumstances and attempts to determine whether a specific event coheres with that pattern. If an event coheres with a larger pattern, then it is more likely to be historical than not. Scholars agree that Christ's crucifixion coheres with other known facts of his life. Most obvious being that he clearly upset the Jewish authorities by claiming to be the divine Son of Man. This title was Christ's preferred self-reference, according to Dan Wallace. So I'm showing you that you don't know anything about the historical method and what it entails, and how the New Testament, according to the scholars, passes the historical method with early attestation, multiple attestation, criteria of embarrassment, and criteria of coherence. And so what you have is, according to the scholars that you even said, one, that their primary source on whether or not Jesus was crucified, and how they conclude that Jesus was crucified, is the New Testament. That's what you admitted earlier. But at the same time, in the same breath, you're saying that it's not reliable. It's not a reliable source when they use it as a reliable source for the crucifixion of Jesus. That's the conundrum that you're in. And so then when you say, well, they didn't believe in the resurrection, the resurrection is a supernatural event. So this is what we have from the even the liberal scholars. They agree that the disciples of Jesus thought that they saw a resurrected Christ. They agree that there was some claim of a resurrection going on. They just don't affirm that it happened because it's supernatural now. So since it's going beyond the natural, this is something that the liberal scholars, who are naturalists mostly, who don't believe in the supernatural, who don't believe in miracles, they reject the resurrection, but with no evidence behind it, no real reason behind it. When the resurrection is the best explanatory evidence for said event. So you bringing up them not agreeing with the resurrection has no bearing on historicity, but on their bias towards the supernatural. That's why that's a red herring and has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You're cooking yourself. You yourself admitted, I'm going to keep throwing your own words in your face. You yourself admitted, one, that the historical scholars agree that Jesus was crucified. Number two, you agreed that the historical scholars use the New Testament as their primary source for the fact, not that it's a maybe, not that it might have happened. Let me just give you, because you keep saying, that maybe some guy. Let me show you how you're misrepresenting them. Here's James Dunn. He says the crucifixion is one of the two facts in the life of Jesus that command almost universal assent, and that it ranks so high on the almost impossible to doubt or to deny scale of historical facts. That's James Dunn. Here's Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman, the crucifixion of Jesus by the Romans is one of the most secure. Does Bart Ehrman say maybe, guys? He says it is a maybe. No, he says it's one of the most secure facts we have about his life. Okay? Scholar Luke Timothy Johnson agrees, saying the support for the mode of his death, its agents, and perhaps its co-agents is overwhelmingly Jesus faced a trial before his death, was condemned and executed by crucifixion. Historian Gerd Lunemann finds that Jesus' death as a consequence of crucifixion, watch this, ladies and gentlemen, is indisputable. Excuse me. Hold on. Excuse me.
I'm gonna cook this one. I'm gonna roast this. No problem.
I hope you do, because you're the one getting roasted. I'm gonna turn you over though. John Dominic Crossan says.
Wait.
Says, excuse me. Why am I being interrupted?
Look at what he said.
Why am I being interrupted?
Go ahead.
Why am I being interrupted? Seriously.